I wasn't expecting much going into this film. Between all the rewrites and reshoots, the director leaving early to work on another project, the release date constantly being pushed back, it wasn't looking too promising. So it's not surprising the movie ended up being a disaster. It didn't really have a chance to begin with. I think the MCU is falling into some traps that are really keeping it down. Where it was once one of the biggest juggernauts at the box office, it's been floundering basically since Endgame, and I think a lot of those issues cropped up in this film. First of all, there's a lot of homework you have to do in order to really get the most out of these films. Like, it's not just a sequel to Captain Marvel from 2019. You also have to watch some Disney Plus shows like Miss Marvel or WandaVision, and that's just for the core cast. There's also elements from Secret Invasion and Hawkeye, but on top of all of that, it still feels like we're missing something. Like, there's this whole conflict on Hala where after the events of Captain Marvel, but events that we didn't actually get to see, Carol ended up launching a civil war, which somehow depleted the planet of its natural resources and killed the sun. And the movie just expects us to accept this. To be honest, I think this might have worked better as a Disney Plus show rather than a film. The way it was structured kind of felt like it would lend itself well to that format too. Like, every scene was just them going from place to place. So each location probably could have been its own episode. It could have fleshed things out better with a few more hours. And I think its shortcomings probably would have been more forgivable too. I think audiences expect a certain level of quality when it comes to the films, and in my opinion it just didn't deliver. Watching the movie gave me tonal whiplash. On the one hand, there's some goofy shenanigans going on, but on the other hand, there's some very dark scenes, and these things just kind of happen and then they move on to the next scene. It just didn't feel like it flowed very well. Also, the villain was really hamming it up. She kept her eyes really wide the entire time she was on screen. I'm assuming she was trying to be intimidating and serious, but it kinda came off as goofy. Basically, she wants revenge on Carol for dooming Hala by targeting planets that are important to Carol so she can steal their resources to replace the ones lost on Hala. This chaos on the planet has dated back for 30 years, and apparently Carol hasn't done anything to try to help the situation in all that time. She says that she feels guilty, so she's been avoiding it, and also avoiding Monica, who is pretty bitter about Carol never coming to see her after she promised she would. But Carol explains it's because her guilt makes her feel like she's not the hero that Monica deserves. Honestly, this whole situation just makes Carol look pretty bad. She's basically responsible for a genocide, and she's just been avoiding the problem as people suffer, even though she could be doing something. In fact, at the end of the movie, Monica tells her that she could just restart Hala's sun, which would help a lot. Why didn't she think of that herself? Why'd she have to have someone tell her? She also told everybody on Earth that she couldn't help during the snap because she was busy helping other planets, but now it kind of seems like she was mostly farting around in space. She got married to this handsome prince. Apparently there was some kind of legal issue. They kind of gloss over this, but the villain manages to damage 2 of the planets. And no offense, but I feel like the Marvels shouldn't be having this much trouble with her. First of all, it's established that she can absorb energy, but they keep shooting her with energy blasts, which she just absorbs, instead of pivoting to another tactic. I mean, weren't they saying that Carol was the strongest Avenger? Can't she just punch her until she knocks her out or something? They keep saying that they would be able to defeat her if it weren't for the switching thing, which I'll get to, but that seems more like an excuse if I'm being honest. Just punch her. I'm sure it'll be fine. Instead, we get this kind of convoluted mechanic. Basically, Dar-Ben, who is the villain, opened a portal, and then Carol and Monica both touched it at the same time, which causes the 2 of them and also Miss Marvel to get their powers entangled because Dar-Ben used the bangle that matches Kamala's bangle to open the portal in the first place, so I guess Kamala got sucked into this too. So now whenever they use their powers at the same time, they switch places. Yeah, things kind of just happened in this film. So if Dar-Ben also had light powers, would she also be getting switched around? I think that's how it worked. That's how Monica said it worked anyway. The whole thing just feels kind of forced though. So Dar-Ben manages to do huge damage to 2 planets, including displacing a whole colony of Skrull, and also Carol left a bunch of them to die, which also seemed kind of unnecessary. Why is Carol failing so much in this film? We also don't get a proper follow-up to these planets, just a throwaway line saying that they'll be okay. So did they get their resources back? Or what? It would have been nice to have some elaboration. As for the rest of the Marvels, I've never been a fan of how they adapted Monica. She was called Captain Marvel before Carol, but here they made her a child who looked up to Carol and called her aunt. It was a choice. Now she doesn't even use a superhero name, actively refusing to to take one. I thought they would just call her Photon, since that's one of her aliases in the comics. But no fun superhero name. As for Miss Marvel, I did appreciate the energy that her actress Iman Vellani brought to the role. She seemed really invested and happy to be there. She's very green, and she's excited to be around these heroes, especially since she's been idolizing Captain Marvel for so long. But she has to come to terms with the fact that Carol isn't perfect, and heroes sometimes have to make tough calls, which is a difficult but important lesson, although admittedly I do think that some of this was a little forced, like the whole civil war on Holland to begin with, or abandoning people to die on that Skrull colony, when they probably could have done more. That's just my opinion, but I do think Kamala stepped up well considering the situation she was put in, and she was put through a lot. There was one point where Carol switched with Kamala, and then instead of trying to figure out what's going on, she just flies off. So she ends up switching with Kamala again, but now Kamala is falling to the earth and is going to die. The situation is so desperate that Monica literally has to unlock a new power to save her. Luckily, they both managed to recover pretty quickly, but still, that was a lot. There are also side characters like Nick Fury, who are all largely just there for comic relief. Admittedly, it doesn't feel like Nick Fury brings the same presence he used to in Marvel films. He's more like the wacky uncle now, and it is a little disappointing. He spends a lot of the movie hurting these aliens that look like cats, at least when they're not using their powers, which unfortunately largely involves eating people. They're actually kind of creepy, and this is coming from someone who loves cats. There's a point where they need to evacuate the ship, but there aren't enough escape pods. What is this, the Titanic? So their plan is to have all of the Flurkins, which is the actual name for this species, eat the entire crew so they can be hacked up later, since cats are smaller and easier to transport in the escape pods. But instead of telling everyone that they're going to be safe and they just need to get inside the Flurkins, they just let them panic and run for their lives, thinking they're going to be eaten by aliens. It's like something out of Jurassic Park. And while this chaos is happening, they're playing Memories from Cats the musical. I know they thought it was funny, but it really wasn't. It was just extremely inappropriate. So the movie is a mess. We did get some crossover with the Fox universe and the X-Men, but I probably would be more hyped if this had come up after Endgame instead of now, when the MCU is in such a funk. Ultimately, the Marvels had a lot going against it, and it wasn't able to overcome that. I know they were trying to go for diversity, which is admirable, but ultimately this felt really pandering and just not well thought out and written. The cats, the musical numbers, the tried and true strong female lead that even celebrities are complaining about now. I just think people deserve better representation in movies. Now there's talks of them bringing back the original cast and reviving some of the dead members, so it's pretty clear that something has to change. I just hope for the MCU's sake it's not too late. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think the MCU still has a leg to stand on? Or are you ready to move on to something new? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'd like to give a shout out to the channel members: Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Hussyman42, Nixel, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Takari the Professor, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Garcia XV Legend, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Spam, Soundboy00, Kitsune Fiora, Lucas Geist, Jay Draws, Blue Spirit, Bandito Bane, Meowzers, Sky, Jin KZ, Philip, Stutania, Isaac Martinez, Lil, Miyamoto Naosugi, and Data Dine Executive. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. If you want to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support the channel that way. And if you enjoyed this content, I'd appreciate it if you left a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.